Hey everybody, this is Rykard here again, and welcome to a video where I'm going to be talking about Competitive Coromon. For those that don't know, Coromon is a monster battling game, very similar to Pokemon, hence why I've been interested in it. And it came out a couple years ago, but it has since been updated quite a bit now, and I think it has a really awesome competitive format for online battles and things like that, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that today. I wanted to start off though with a little bit of an introduction about the game though. So just like in Pokemon, you have your boxes full of, all the Coromon that you've caught, and you have a bunch of different types. You have your normal types, electric, ghost, ground, or sand types, I think they're actually called, fire, ice, and water. And if you notice, there's obviously only 7 different types in the game. It makes things a little bit more simplistic in that way, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. It's just a little more simplistic. And the nice thing about it too, or an interesting thing about it too, is that there are no dual types. So if you're a water type, you are just a water type. And the cool thing about this, and why I think the competitive situation with this game is great, is that every single Coromon feels unique and different in its own way. While there is still a little bit of imbalance, like yes, some Coromon are definitely better than others more often than not, everything still is pretty unique and can do things. Each Coromon can do something that another Coromon of its type generally usually cannot do, which makes it a very interesting way when you're team building, because you have a lot of different options. Like if I wanted to use a water type and I wanted to use it, say for example, defensively, what's crazy about this is that all of these, Megalobite, Yuka-Claw, Jelliquad, Chonktoad, Swampa, to a lesser extent, Darkara, and Atlantern all can function as an effective defensive water type. Whereas you have Yuka-Claw, who can also be a really powerful physical attacker. Swampa is a really powerful and fast special attacker. And then they also have some unique abilities that set them apart from each other as well. Like, for example, Yuka-Claw, and also, it's not showing here, but the ability of Yuka-Claw and Chonktoad is Humidifier, which sets rain on the field. So that's really cool. Chonktoad also has an ability that when you make contact with it, it poisons the opponent, which is kind of cool. So there's a lot of really unique, interesting things about the way that each of these Coromon work, which set them apart from each other, which makes team building really interesting and definitely allows you to kind of have like favorites that you like using because of the way that they function, or what your preferences are in terms of your own play style. The other cool thing about this game too is that while there are only 7 types, there are many other types of attacks that exist exclusively just as types. So for example, if I go into here, you can see that I have a few moves. I have Bubble Blower, which is a water move, Quicksand, which is a sand type or ground type move, but I also have Soul Crush, which is a magic type move. But if I showed you before, there are no magic type Coromon. I also have Crunch, which is a foul type move, but there are no foul type Coromon. And these types are interesting because they make it so that you actually get a little bit more type coverage, but you don't necessarily get stab on it, which is kind of cool. And it makes it feel like, if one Coromon has like insane type coverage, it's not overpowered because the moves aren't necessarily being boosted by anything other than just their regular damage. And I think that's kind of interesting. So for example, a moveset like this gives this Coromon a ton of type coverage. Actually, if I were to change this, I would probably actually change this to Head Crash instead, because that's a heavy type move, which is super effective against ice types. So you'd have Crunch, which is good against water types, Bubble Blower for fire and ground, Head Crash, which is good against ice, and Quicksand, which is good against electric. So you get like insane type coverage on this guy. But none of it feels like crazy overpowered because he also doesn't have like the best physical or special attack in the game. So it's like pretty average damage for everything, unless it's, going to be super effective. But there's a lot of really cool variety. I really like pretty much all of these guys. Like there's no Coromon where I'm just like, this thing is weird and I never want to use it. So I want to go ahead and show you the team builder now, because I think this is the most interesting part about this and the way that certain mechanics in this game work. So the first thing is, if you noticed in my team builder there a second ago, I had quite a few Coromon of the same type. And that is because they have different levels of potency. And so what do I mean by that? Well, in this game, potency is effectively the shiny mechanic. So this guy right here is a perfect Humvee. It has all like maximum potency, 21 as to what it is in this game. However, this one only has a potency of 5, and this one only has a potency of 18. So naturally you would think, well, I need to get perfect versions of everything in order to use it online to have a chance, because if I don't have a perfect one, my opponent might, and then theirs is just going to be better than mine. But that is not how this works in this game, which is really, really nice. So the maximum number of potential points that you get to allocate into different stats, which effectively are the EVs of this game, is capped at 126. And no matter what potency your Coromon is, when you go online and you go to build a team, you get the maximum number. So you don't have to, quote, shiny hunt in this game to be able to get the maximum number of points. Sorry. And so what's nice about this too is that there's no need to look for quote perfect IVs or anything like that, because it's all there. Sorry, hang on a second. Sorry, I have a bit of a cough. So I'm going to go ahead and show you that right now. So if I click on this guy right here and I go into the team builder and I click select, the moves don't matter right now, and I go hi, to the potential stats, and hit the reset button here, you see I get the 126, and this was a standard Humvee, right? But if I go into the storage box, sorry, my cat is meowing at me, and I go into the perfect one, apologies again, everybody, I'm so sorry about that, and I go into the potential stats, and I go to set the potential stats, you'll notice that I also still have the 126. So this team builder is incredibly well made. It makes getting into this really easy because you don't have to do anything to get perfect Coromon in online battles, because the team builder is so good. What a concept. I could think of one game that would really benefit from having something like this. What's nice, so you can just allocate them. Maximum of 60 in any stat. So let's say I maximize my attack and speed. And then there's this other little extraneous stat here called SP. That effectively kind of functions a little bit more like mana, in like an RPG. So like instead of PP, where you can use a move a certain number of times, like say this attack has 8 PP or whatever, and you can only use it 8 times. In this game, you can use any attack any amount of times as long as you have the SP to do it. But stronger moves use more SP than others, and eventually you're going to run out and you're going to have to replenish that SP. Now this is really cool, because you can use that actually on a predicted switch. If you think your attack wouldn't do much damage to a switch in, you can choose to recover SP instead, thus allowing you then when you come back in to have more ability to use your damaging moves. And this is actually really cool too, because you can use this on a choice locked Coromon, because there are items like choice scarf, choice specs, choice band, but they're not called that in this game. And you can actually use the SP recover to use your turn when you expect maybe a switch, and then you don't actually lock yourself into a move, and then you can then choose to use a move that you will lock yourself into. So it has kind of a really cool mechanic to play around. There are also attacks in the game that are meant to drain SP, so it makes it so that it's harder for you to use attacks and things like that. So it's kind of a really unique way of making it so that you don't have to worry about using a move a certain number of times. You can always use attacks as long as you have the SP for it. This does, however, sometimes create unfinishable battle situations, because if both Coromon have a recovery move and can't damage each other enough, you will effectively get an endless battle, which has happened to me one time. There really needs to be like a draw button in the game, but unfortunately that doesn't exist. Sorry again. So once you have your Coromon set, and you set its stats, you can set its skills. And whether or not you've actually taught it the skills, you can still use them. So for example, there's this option here which are called skill flashes. These are basically the TMs in the game. And when it says available skill flashes, this effectively means I haven't taught it yet in game. So it's just saying, hey, it can learn all these moves. Why don't you give it one of these? So whether or not, you actually give it the TM or whatever you want to call it, you can just use it in the team builder. It's really nice. And you pick 4 moves, and they all, are, various forms of good in various ways, depending on, the Coromon that you're using. So kind of cool. The other thing that's cool about this too is that you can set your item, and you can see that when I look at the items over here, that there are a lot of familiar ones that are just given different names. So the broom gem is preventing negative effects of entry hazards, so it's basically heavy duty boots. Hazards are actually interesting in this game too, because you can only set one type of hazard on the side of the field at a time, so you can't hazard stack, which is kind of cool. And each hazard kind of has a unique effect, and there's quite a few. So there's like sand skewers, which is like a ground type hazard. It does deal more damage to electric types when they switch in. but it also causes like bleeding, which is kind of like a one turn status effect that drops your HP just by a little bit, but only if you stay in. There's a hazard that lowers your opponent's PP or SP on switch in. There's a hazard that burns them on switch in. There's a hazard that does ice type damage on switch in, and then there's a hazard that deals damage also on switch in, but it's typeless and only affects Coromon that are on the ground, unless you get 3 stacks of it, in which case it will affect everybody. So there's a lot of hazard play in here, but the other cool thing about it too is that there's actual beneficial hazards. I don't even want to call it a hazard. I don't know what the term for it is actually, but that you can set on your own side of the field to help you out. So for example, there's one called Blessed Grounds, which allows you to recover HP when you switch in if you set it on your own side of the field. Or there's one that's called Purifying Grounds, which heals you of status when you switch in on your own side of the field. So there's a really cool hazard dynamic with this game that I think is really unique. So anyways, you have stuff like this Overcharger Gem, which is like, a life orb. This is effectively Expert Belt. This is your protective pads. This is Assault Vest, but then this is the physical version of Assault Vest. This is a Choice Scarf. This is a Choice Band. This is a Choice Specs. And you have your recovery berries. You have type berries. So like in Gen 5 where you had type gems, like this boosts the power of a ghost move. This boosts the power of a fire move. You have a power herb. You have a focus sash. So there's lots of really, options that you would expect to see. And a few extras that are exclusive to the game. And the other cool thing about this too is that you can set your trait, which is effectively your ability. So one common ability to run on Humby is Gullible. And the cool thing about this is that when I click to set my trait, sorry again, I'm going to cough. You can go ahead and set actually multiple versions of it, because you can see I see all the different versions of Humby. There's Humby, there's Beazle, and there's Swarmy. And if you notice, my trait changed every time I clicked on one, but my stats did also. So Gullible is an ability that basically works like Simple. Every stat change is doubled. But if I go to Beazle, if I switch that, you notice that I am sacrificing a bit of my stats for this, but every positive stat change is doubled, but not the negative ones. So it's a slightly better ability, but my stats are slightly worse. And then if you go to ++, it's an even better ability. So selectively Gullible, positive stat changes are doubled while negative ones are ignored. So this is the best version of that ability, but I have to sacrifice a lot of HP, attack, and special defense in order to run it. So I'm effectively using a more frail Pokemon, or Coromon, excuse me, but I get a better ability. So it makes every single Coromon, no matter what stage of its evolution, pretty viable. Usually the middle stage ones aren't as usable as like the final and like the first stage, but for the most part, every single one is viable. The other thing about this that's really cool is you can also set skins, and these are like, if you have the perfect version, you can also access the potent and the standard version just for aesthetic purposes. And there's even unique ones that exist too that are like additional ones you can use an in-game currency called style crystals on. I did not buy this one because I don't use this Coromon that often, but you can see that there's some cool options with that as well, and we can check out the style shop later. But I have quite a lot of different team styles. I'm not saying any of these are amazing, but like you can run weather-based teams. So this is Heat Wave, which is a weather. This is Glacial Affinity. I'll talk more about that a little bit, maybe in another video if I ever decide to. But I do believe that this is a objectively busted ability and needs to be tweaked. It's the only thing about the game that I feel like is slightly unbalanced right now. But the team that I've mostly been using is this one called Thunder Salvo, which I built. And Thunder Salvo is a move that normally is just a 90 pace power move. It's an electric move. But when you have another electric type alive on your team, it does priority damage. So you now have this really powerful priority electric move. So this team has 2 Thunder Salvo users, and this little like bug guy called Rhino Buzz and this little cloud dude called DC. And they both basically just like spam electric moves, and then the rest of the team is designed to support that. So it's really cool. I also really like this team, Defensive Balance, and this is the team that I used to hit rank 1 on the ladder back in season 23, which is in May. The other cool thing about this is too is you can randomize stuff. So if I wanted to like randomize a team to play with my friend, I could just click this randomize button, and now look, I have a randomized team. That's cool. So like that's a really nice little feature that's just built into the game. But the thing about this too is that yes, there is a competitive scene. When you win competitive games, you actually do get those style crystals, which is nice. And at the moment, I believe, if this hasn't changed in the last like 20 minutes, okay, yeah, I am currently number 1 on the 6v6 ladder. And then there also is a 3v3 ladder where I am currently number 2. I was number 1 yesterday, but this guy, I guess, played a couple of matches. I have that posted on Twitter, though. I have proof that it existed. So yeah, I'm doing pretty good. So I really do enjoy this game. You can find a lot of other videos online that other people have made, maybe about like actual battles that were uploaded. I would be interested maybe in doing that, but I also just don't have the time to make videos like I used to anymore. So yeah, there's just a little bit about Coromon. So hope you guys are interested in that. It's a lot of fun, and I hope you had fun, and I hope you give it a shot. It's really, really good game. I really enjoy it. So that's it for today, everybody. So as always, take care, goodbye, and I'll see you all next time.